What's up, folks? It's Dr. Remy LeBeau, and I'm coming at you once again from the X-Layer to provide you some thoughts on this little unexpected gem that just dropped during this sort of summer drought of content that we all experience between your standard viewing seasons, where there isn't much to watch, which is a good thing because it allows you to catch up on stuff, it allows you to binge new stuff, and maybe even just like read a book, go outside, play some ball, catch up with friends, family, etc., all that stuff. Nonetheless, like, you know, you do wind up in these moments where it's like, oh, well, what do I watch? I could watch my old stuff, or I want to watch the new stuff, but is there new stuff? And then you kind of search for stuff, and then you find stuff like this. Castlevania cartoon series / movie that Netflix produced. Just dropped a few days ago. It's 4 episodes long. Each episode is a little bit less than half an hour. So really, it's like a 2-hour movie. Maybe like an hour and a half to a 2-hour movie. Maybe an hour and 40 minutes. And I have to say, I really enjoyed it. So I do have a past with Castlevania. Castlevania is one of the first NES games that came out, Nintendo Entertainment Systems. Yes, I am of that. I'm a man of a particular age who grew up in the 80s, 90s. First video game system was, of course, Atari, Pac-Man, Pitfall, Space Invaders, all your standard classics. Then, of course, all of a sudden, the Nintendo Entertainment System came out, and you could move your character through a world that existed in your TV, and it was exciting. And Super Mario Brothers obviously is the definitive game that came out then. But at that same time, you had a few others like Zelda, of course, which is like the other definitive game. But, you know, you had Metroid, you had other stuff. But the one that usually drew me, because I kind of had like this kind of horror aesthetic to me, like I was kind of like a gothy kid, was Castlevania. And so Castlevania, super fun game. You know, you're like Simon Belmont, you're moving through Castlevania, which is Dracula's castle, and you're going to kill Dracula, and it was pretty cool. And then they came out with a sequel, which kind of took you outside of the castle and kind of extended the lore a bit, which I think is partly what this series is based on. And then they had Castlevania 3, which was really cool. It was kind of like, let's go back to the first one, but like make it better. And I really love Castlevania 3. I played the shit out of that game. I never fucking beat it, though. I can never beat any of these games. I always got to Dracula, and I always like tried to beat Dracula, but I could never beat Dracula. Never. Which is fine, because when you beat him, he became like this beast, and then you have to beat the beast, and I just couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. I was not that dedicated, but I always got really close. Unfortunately, in the age of YouTube now, you get to see like the end credit stuff post the beating of a game, so I don't feel like I missed out on anything. You know, I feel like my hard work paid off, even though it took a few years. Anyway, so this thing just dropped. Warren Ellis wrote it, who is a comic book writer. He's written a variety of stories, talented guy. Obviously seems to have a liking for this world because he told a good story within it. Visually, the aesthetic was perfect. It was like exactly what you want to see in a Castlevania world. There were subsequent games, and I'm sure that beyond Castlevania 3 that kind of extended the lore and the look of stuff, but really, like, ultimately what you always wanted was like what you got in those like artistic pieces that were in the covers of the games. You know, kind of like this very precise gothic representation of the castle, and it just like evoked everything you wanted from the world, which you didn't really get in the 16-bit world, and maybe you got a little more later, but never really quite captured it. The show captures it perfectly. Like, the aesthetic is perfect. It's like very dark and cloudy and just like eerie, in you know, like all the elements, like the old world type. The show is set in like 1470 or something, or like 1450. I forget exactly what it was, but it's like obviously very sort of old old worldly Europe, Eastern European. You know, obviously technology has not even been advanced to any industrial revolution type state due to mechanization. But you do see some of that in here. There's kind of like a steampunkish quality to the world as well once you go deeper into it. Anyway, a lot of interesting visual elements. The actual Castlevania looks like the actual castle from the video game that you saw on the cover of the games. So as far as all that goes, as far as like getting the feel of the game and the world and kind of like bringing it to life, it did that. It did that exceptionally well. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. But what I enjoyed even more was like the story and like the characters and it's like it's essentially an adult cartoon. Like there's all sorts of gore, there's cussing. They do not hold back on that, which is good because like you don't need that crap. Like the young kids today aren't playing Castlevania. It's like people like me who grew up with Castlevania are now adults. Like we don't want to see like the watered down version of what. No, we want to see like the bloody Castlevania where Dracula and his forces are like destroying and killing and it's butcherous. That's what we want to see, and that's what we got in the show, and it's executed really well. The animation style is kind of anime, which is nice. You didn't get like weird like CGI elements, which I never really like in animation. I like it all to be drawn. I'm assuming this is drawn on computer, but it's not computer generated. Like it looks like there's actual drawing going on. And then the backgrounds are amazingly beautifully painted and designed. It's really nice looking. Like it's exactly what you want it to look like. The drama is serious. The story, the core story is really good. I'm not going to spoil anything. I think you should watch it and enjoy it. Kind of let it play out. It actually is surprising because it's a different take on this whole story of Dracula and like how he affects the world and maybe like the world surrounding him, which was always very particular to Castlevania and therefore, you know, perfectly suited for something like this. There's been a trend of like really bad video game movies over the last few years. I think this animation demonstrates that like maybe video games are suited for the animation medium versus like the live action, at least in like their first iterations beyond video games, because in this way you can really flesh out the world. You can go all in. You don't have to like hire a bunch of like kind of kind of half-rate actors that are like kind of in there but not really like into the roles, not really giving it their all. Some of them are generally phoning it in. You don't get like the shitty CGI that's like really trying to do a lot more than they could do with their budget. You're not getting all these things that like really take down the quality of what the world is supposed to be and feel like, which I think is ultimately like the hugest hindrance to these video game films. And so in the animation medium, you can go all in. You can really represent the world properly. You can hire some good voiceover actors to really give, the gravitas, sincerity that's necessary to really convey a sense of realism in a very unrealistic situation, and really sell it to the audience. And I'm sold. Like I'm sold. I really enjoyed it. It's a short story, and there's a lot more story to be told, without a doubt. And it's left me wanting more. So it did everything it had to do, and it did it really well. And I just heard that Netflix has approved a second season with 8 episodes. So they'll double the amount of episodes. So there's more coming. I'm going to assume it's going to be the same quality and ideally the same writers, the same creators, everybody involved. I think his name is Ali Shankar, is a producer. He's this guy that did that Power Rangers short that was really cool that came out a few years ago that everybody liked, or a lot of people liked. And also the Punisher Bad Laundry or something. I forget what it was. It was like this short with the Punisher from the first Punisher movie, Thomas Jane. They never actually said he was the Punisher, but it was sort of like a Punisher thing, and it was really cool. Anyway, he's done some cool shit. He's a big fanboy. And he produced this, and he did a good job bringing some major talent together and really executing the world in the way that it needed to be executed, so that it actually establishes Castlevania as like something legitimate. I remember years ago when I first graduated college and I started working in the film industry before I decided to become an economist. I remember I went to one production office and like next door there was a sign. It was like Castlevania, and like they were doing pre-production on Castlevania years ago. And I'm sure this has been a case for a very long time. There's been attempts to make Castlevania live action stuff for years, and I'm sure it's always been shitty and therefore never got the green light because they couldn't pull off the world. And so I think this is a great sort of way to kind of like take us into like a Castlevania world, establishing it as like a legitimate lore and canon for fans, expanding the fan base, and then maybe ultimately then promulgating the property to the filmic realm. I think is probably the best course for this. Anyway, that's my review. As you can see, I'm excited by this, which means that I enjoyed it. And that's that. Anyway, thanks for checking out my content. I just got my 1,000th subscriber, so happy 1,000 subscribers, folks. I have a lot more stuff coming. I'm really enjoying just kind of talking to you guys, for those of you that enjoy listening to me. And if you haven't already, you can subscribe down here and just keep up with some of the stuff that I'm talking about. And as always, I'd like to remind you, if you haven't already, you can put an X in that box because ain't nobody checking me, folks. Goodbye.